The United Nations Children's Fund is a United Nations program headquartered in New York City that provides long-term humanitarian and developmental assistance to children and mothers in developing countries. It is one of the members of the United Nations Development Group and its Executive Committee. Unicef was created by the United Nations General Assembly on December 11, 1946. To provide emergency food and health care to children in countries that had been devastated by World War II. Maurice Paté, American humanitarian and businessman, co-founded the United Nations Children's Fund with Herbert Hoover in 1947. Paté served as its first executive director from 1947 until his death in 1965. In 1953, UNICEF became a permanent part of the United Nations system and its name was shortened from the original United Nations International Children's Emergency Fund, but it has continued to be known by the popular acronym based on this previous title. UNICEF relies on contributions from governments and private donors. UNICEF's total income for 2008 was $3,372,540,239. Governments contribute two-thirds of the organization's resources, private groups and some 6 million individuals contribute the rest through the national committees. It is estimated that 91.8% of their revenue is distributed to program services. UNICEF's programs emphasize developing community-level services to promote the health and well-being of children. UNICEF was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize in 1965 and the Prince of Asturias Award of Concord in 2006. Most of UNICEF's work is in the field, with staff in over 190 countries and territories. More than 200 country officers carry out UNICEF's mission through a program developed with host governments. 17 regional officers provide technical assistance to country officers as needed. Overall management and administration of the organization takes place at its headquarters in New York. UNICEF's supply division is based in Copenhagen and serves as the primary point of distribution for such essential items as vaccines, antiretroviral medicines for children and mothers with HIV, nutritional supplements, emergency shelters, family reunification, educational supplies, among others. A 36-member executive board establishes policies, approves programs and oversees administrative and financial plans. The executive board is made up of government representatives who are elected by the United Nations Economic and Social Council, usually for 3-year terms. Recent executive directors of UNICEF include Carol Bellamy, a former head of the Peace Corps, and Ann Veneman, a former United States Secretary of Agriculture whose mandate included increasing the organization's focus on the Millennium Development Goals. Since 2010, the current executive director of UNICEF has been Anthony Lake, a former U.S. National Security Advisor. UNICEF is an intergovernmental organization and thus is accountable to those governments. UNICEF's salary and benefits package is based on the United Nations Commons system. UNICEF National Committees. There are national committees in 36 industrialized countries worldwide, each established as an independent local non-governmental organization. The national committees raise funds from the private sector. UNICEF is funded exclusively by voluntary contributions, and the national committees collectively raise around one-third of UNICEF's annual income. This comes through contributions from corporations, civil society organizations, around 6 million individual donors worldwide. They also rally many different partners, including the media, national and local government officials, NGOs, specialists such as doctors and lawyers, corporations, schools, young people and the general public, on issues related to children's rights, promotion and fundraising. In the United States, Canada and some other countries, UNICEF is known for its Trick or Treat for UNICEF program, in which children collect money for UNICEF from the houses they trick or treat on Halloween night, sometimes instead of candy. UNICEF is present in 191 countries and territories around the world, but not involved in 9 others. UNICEF designated 1979 as the Year of the Child, and many celebrities including David Essex, Alan Davies and Cat Stevens gave a performance at a benefit concert celebrating the Year of the Child concert in December 1979. Many people in developed countries first hear about UNICEF's work through the activities of one of the 36 national committees for UNICEF. These non-governmental organizations are primarily responsible for fundraising, selling UNICEF greeting cards and products, creating private and public partnerships, advocating for children's rights, and providing other support. The U.S. Fund for UNICEF is the oldest of the national committees, founded in 1947. On 19 April 2007, Grand Duchess Maria Theresa of Luxembourg was appointed UNICEF Eminent Advocate for Children, in which role she has visited Brazil, China, and Burundi. In 2009, the British retailer Tesco used "Change for Good" as advertising, which is trademarked by UNICEF for charity usage but not for commercial or retail use. This prompted the agency to say, "It is the first time in UNICEF's history that a commercial entity has purposely set out to capitalize on one of our campaigns and subsequently damage an income stream which several of our programs for children are dependent on." They went on to call on the public, who have children's welfare at heart, to consider carefully who they support when making consumer choices. Sponsorship. On 7 September 2006, an agreement between UNICEF and the Spanish Catalan Association Football Club FC Barcelona was reached, whereby the club would donate €1.5 million per year to the organization for 5 years. As part of the agreement, FC Barcelona will wear the UNICEF logo on the front of their uniform. This was the first time a football club sponsored an organization rather than the other way around. It was also the first time in FC Barcelona's history that they have had another organization's name across the front of their uniform. In January 2007, UNICEF struck a partnership with Canada's national tent pegging team. The team was officially reflagged as UNICEF Team Canada. Its riders wear UNICEF's logo in competition, and team members promote and raise funds for UNICEF's campaign against childhood HIV/AIDS. When the team became the 2008 tent pegging world champions, UNICEF's flag was raised alongside the Canadian flag at the Games. The first time in the history of international Grand Prix equestrian competition that a non-state flag has flown over the medal podium. The Swedish club Hammarby followed the Spanish and Canadian lead on 14 April 2007, also raising funds for UNICEF and displaying the UNICEF name on their sportswear. The Danish football club Brøndby participated in a similar arrangement from 2008 to 2013. Australian A-League club Sydney FC announced they would also enter into a partnership with UNICEF, raising funds for children in the Asia-Pacific region, and would also display the UNICEF logo for the remainder of the 2011-12 A-League season. Race driver Jacques Villeneuve has occasionally placed the UNICEF logo on the number 27 Bill Davis racing pickup truck in the NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series. In Botswana, UNICEF has funded the development of new state-of-the-art HIV/AIDS education for every school child in Botswana from non-profit organization Teach AIDS. UNICEF recently announced a landmark partnership with Scottish club Rangers FC. UNICEF will partner the Rangers Charity Foundation and have pledged to raise £300,000 by 2011. In 2010, UNICEF created a partnership with Phi Iota Alpha, making them the first Greek-lettered organization UNICEF has ever worked with. In 2011, Phi Iota Alpha raised over $20,000 for the that project and the Trick or Treats for UNICEF campaign. In 2013, they agreed a contract with Greek Association football champions Olympiakos FC, who will don the organization's logo on the front of their shirts. Trick or Treat UNICEF box since 1950, when a group of children in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, donated $17 which they received on Halloween to help post-World War II victims. The Trick or Treat UNICEF box has become a tradition in North America during the fall. These small orange boxes are handed to children at schools in other locations before the 31st of October. As of 2012 update, the Trick or Treat for UNICEF campaign has collected approximately 91 million Canadian dollars in Canada and over $167 million in the US. Cartoons for Children's Rights in 1994. UNICEF held a summit encouraging animation studios around the world to create individual animated spots demonstrating the international rights of children. Cartoons for Children's Rights is the collection of animated shorts based on UNICEF's Convention on the Rights of the Child. Corporate partnership to raise money to support its education and literacy programs. UNICEF collaborates with companies worldwide, international as well as small and medium-sized businesses. Since 2004, the organization has been supported by Montblanc, working collaboratively to help the world's children getting better access to education. According to Vaccine News Daily, Merck & Co. partnered with UNICEF in June 2013 to decrease maternal mortality, HIV and tuberculosis prevalence in South Africa. Merck's program, Merck for Mothers, will give $500 million worldwide for programs that improve health for expectant mothers and their children. In May 2010, Crucial NV announced an additional $110 million award from UNICEF to supply its pentavalent pediatric vaccine Quinvaxim to the developing world. Corporate social responsibility. UNICEF works directly with companies to improve their business practices, bringing them in line with obligations under international law, and ensuring that they respect children's rights in the realms of the marketplace, workplace and the community. In 2012, UNICEF worked with Save the Children and the United Nations Global Compact to develop the children's rights and business principles, and now these guidelines form the basis UNICEF's advice to companies. UNICEF works with companies seeking to improve their social sustainability by guiding them through a due diligence process where issues throughout their supply chain, such as child labor, can be identified and actions to ratify them are put in place. Girl Star. The Girl Star Project is a series of films which document stories of girls from the most disadvantaged communities across 5 northern states who, through attaining education, have managed to break socio-economic constraints to make a success of their lives and become self-sufficient. These young women have grown to become role models in their communities, inspiring younger girls to go to school and continue their education. They have selected professions from the most conventional such as teaching and nursing, to the most unconventional like archery, beekeeping, scrap management, often entering what has traditionally been a man's domain. Celebrity ambassadors. UNICEF ambassadors are leaders in the entertainment industry, representing the fields of film, television, music, sports and beyond. They help raise awareness of the needs of children, and use their talent and fame to fundraise, advocate, and educate on behalf of UNICEF. Facilities. UNICEF World Warehouse. The old UNICEF World Warehouse is a large facility in Denmark, which hosts UNICEF deliverable goods as well as co-hosts emergency goods for United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees and the International Federation of Red Cross and Red Crescent Societies. Until 2012, the facilities was a 25,000 square meters warehouse at Marmormolen in Copenhagen, with construction of a 45,000 square meters UN city that is to house all UN activities in Copenhagen under one roof. The warehouse service has been relocated to outer parts of the free port of Copenhagen. The facility houses the Unicef Supply Division, which manages strategic transport hubs in Dubai, Panama and Shanghai. The warehouse contains a variety of items, e.g., food supplements, water purification tablets, dietary and vitamin supplements, and the school in a box. UNICEF in Assanti Research Centre. The UNICEF in Assanti Research Centre in Florence, Italy, was established in 1988. The centre, formerly known as the International Child Development Centre, has as its prime objectives to improve international understanding of issues relating to children's rights, to promote economic policies that advance the cause of children, and to help facilitate the full implementation of the United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child in industrialized and developing countries. The program for 2006 to 2008 was approved by UNICEF Executive Board in September 2005. It reaffirms the center's academic freedom and the focus of IRC's research on knowledge gaps, emerging questions and sensitive issues which are relevant to the realization of children's rights in developing and industrialized countries. It capitalizes on IRC's role as an interface between UNICEF field experience, international experts, research networks and policymakers, and is designed to strengthen the center's institutional collaboration with regional academic and policy institutions, pursuing the following goals: generation and communication of strategic and influential knowledge on issues affecting children and the realization of their rights, knowledge exchange and brokering, support to UNICEF's advocacy, policy and program development in support of the Millennium Agenda, securing and strengthening the center's institutional and financial basis. 3 interrelated strategies guide the achievement of these goals: evidence-based analysis drawing on quantitative and qualitative information, the application of appropriate methodologies, and the development of recommendations to assess and inform advocacy and policy action. Enhanced partnerships with research and policy institutions and development actors, globally and at regional level, in developing and industrialized countries. Communication and leveraging of research findings and recommendations to support policy development and advocacy initiatives through strategic dissemination of studies and contribution to relevant events and fora. Controversies. NSA surveillance documents of Edward Snowden showed in December 2013 that British and American intelligence agencies' surveillance targets with America's National Security Agency included organizations such as the UN's children's charity UNICEF, the United Nations Development Programme, Médecins Sans Frontières, and the Economic Community of West African States. Adoption program. UNICEF has a policy preferring orphanages only be used as temporary accommodation for children when there is no alternative. UNICEF has historically opposed the creation of large-scale, permanent orphanages for children, preferring instead to find children places in their families and communities, wherever possible. This has led UNICEF to be skeptical of international adoption efforts as a solution to child care problems in developing countries. UNICEF has preferred to see children cared for in their birth countries rather than be adopted by foreign parents. Recently, major news outlets such as US News have begun to investigate UNICEF's practice of giving large cash payments to developing countries in exchange for their closure of their international adoption programs, and have even labeled UNICEF a villain for the extent of its negative impact on orphans. Elizabeth Bartholet and Paolo Barozzo have written in this context, encouraging adoption protocols to take on a more child-centric viewpoint. Effectiveness. One concern is that the child mortality rate has not decreased in some areas as rapidly as had been planned, especially in sub-Saharan Africa, where in 2013, the region still has the highest child mortality rate, 92 deaths per 1,000 live births, and that, globally, nearly half of under-5 deaths are attributable to undernutrition. In 2005, Richard Horton, editor-in-chief of The Lancet, editorialized that over 60% of these deaths were and remain preventable, and that the coverage levels for these interventions are appallingly low. In the 42 countries that account for 90% of child deaths,